many of us are still born with nothing. And the way capitalism works, I know capitalism really well. That's my background. I know finance and capitalism and all that really well. Capitalism is kind of capitalism in its purest form becomes a type of slavery. If you go into capital, if you go into capitalism, into a capitalist system, and you don't have any capital, you will be a slave for those who own the capital. You have to make yourself into capital. It's like if I send my daughter out into the world, this is why I tell you guys all the time about making sure your kids understand how to build wealth and how to save and how to invest. If you send your daughter out into the world with no resources, no money, and nowhere to go, then she becomes a prime target for the biggest pimp on the block. Right? That's who the pimps look for. The pimps don't look for the women with high self-esteem, strong father figures, and plenty of resources and education. They don't look for those women. They look for that poor girl who doesn't have a nickel in her pocket, who doesn't know where her next meal's coming from, right? Who's zapped of her self-esteem, who doesn't really understand what's going on, right? That's who they come along and they say, hey, I want to empower you, which really ultimately translates into I want to exploit you for my own personal gain. So capitalism is the biggest pimp that there ever was. American capitalism is a pimp and hoe type system. And in order for you to protect yourself and protect your children, you must make sure they have resources. Remember this: freedom without resources is basically slavery. So after slavery, because you had slaves that were thrown out into the system with no knowledge of how the system works, no resources, nowhere to go, no ability to read and write or anything like that. All they really had was maybe family, which I told you guys, family is a huge resource. People that have family tend to be stronger than people who don't have family, right? They were just stuck. So a lot of them went back to the plantation. They said, I don't have anywhere to go. I don't. All I know is working on Massa's plantation. So they went back to the plantation, and a lot of you to this day are stuck on the corporate plantation. The plant it's just a plantation by another name. And maybe you're stuck because your student loans are too high and you can't figure out how to pay them. Maybe you're stuck because nobody ever taught you how to start a business, so you don't know how to go out here and make money at a high enough level to liberate yourself. Maybe you're stuck because you've never were exposed to any other options or possibilities. Maybe you're stuck because your self-esteem wasn't there. Nobody gave you that. Maybe you're stuck because nobody left you an inheritance, right? You do understand that there are people, some of them are black, who never have to work. There are people who are working class people who made decisions 20, 30 years ago such that their children don't have to ever work for anybody. They don't have to get up and do nothing for nobody, right? So I want your children to be those kids. I want your children to be those kids. So anyway, let me keep going. So before I move on, though, just as a practical solution, if you go to blackmoneyminute.com, I'll put that $5 a day investing plan there. It's very simple, very straightforward. Anybody can understand it. Anybody can do it. Go to blackmoneyminute.com. You can download the book, and it's very easy to implement. Implement it, stick with it, be consistent, and your child will not be stuck trying to go back to a plantation in order to feed himself. So let me keep going. All right. So that next, he says, he talks about the color consciousness of the Constitution. We're on page 14, bottom of page 14 of the book Powernomics. You can get a copy at powernomics.com if you like your own copy. He says he also clearly included ownership of slaves when the Constitution was finally ratified in 1789. However, it used broad, ambiguous, and inoffensive public relations type words such as all and everyone. Oh wait, you know what? I think let me scoot forward. My apologies. I think I missed my spot here. Citizenship and the benefits of whiteness were constitutionally denied to blacks. Ironically, like blacks, Indians were also specifically identified in the Constitution, but they were excluded from official abuse because they were categorized as free inhabitants and encouraged to assimilate into white society. When the Constitution was modified in the 1860s through the addition of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, the Black Constitution, after numerous rewrites, the final language contained ambiguous words such as all persons, any person, and everyone, although it was commonly understood that the constitutional amendments were for black ex-slaves. The initial congressional enabling language hinted that the civil rights laws bound the U.S. Congress to take care of black ex-slaves until they could take care of themselves. To this day, Congress has never abided by their own laws, and all members have sat by silently while the dominant white society has boldly undermined the economic rights awarded to black people. They allowed the majority white society to co-opt the Black Constitution and promote the myth that the United States Constitution was colorblind. The Constitution was conceived as a socioeconomic covenant for those who already have power, wealth, and nearly unlimited rights. To be a truly democratic society, this nation would have to redistribute and share some of its wealth and power with Black America. The Black Constitution was passed following the Civil War because of the efforts of a small group of radical liberal Republican congressmen who succeeded in amending the Constitution by including color-specific amendments for Blacks. I mean, how many of you even knew that there was a Black Constitution? Hey, give me a yes or no. How many did y'all even know that this thing existed? Did you learn this in school? Did they talk? No, I didn't even know. I mean, the fact that Dr. Anderson is talking about a Black Constitution is pretty heavy to me. I just want to make that point. So he says these amendments gave Blacks a minimum level of rights that certain congressmen hoped would offset some of the tyranny of the majority white society. So that now he talks about population monopolies. Now, in the beginning, remember, we talked about monopolies and kind of what it means. It means kind of having sole control over everything. And also why monopolies are very dangerous, because it creates a form of economic and political bullying. Anybody who controls everything is like the fat kid who controls all the food, and all the little hungry, starving kids can't get no food because the fat kid feels like all the food belongs to him. So he either gets to eat all the food himself, or he gets to pick and choose who gets food based on who serves him the most. So that's an abusive type of infrastructure. That's something that we have consistently in America. Like right now, we have tech. We don't have a tech monopolies per se, but we have tech oligopolies. Oligopolies is where you have a gang of companies that kind of control everything. So when they wanted to deplatform Minister Farrakhan, when they wanted to eliminate him from social media, all the tech oligarchs got together and said, we're all going to take him off our platform. So that means Facebook got on the phone with Twitter, Twitter got on the phone with Instagram, Instagram got on the phone with TikTok, TikTok got on the phone with Spotify, and all of these tech oligarchs got together and said, we're going to make sure Louis Farrakhan does not have a voice, and we're all going to agree that he's dangerous, even though there's no evidence to show that he's ever been dangerous to anybody, right? So monopolies and oligopolies are extremely dangerous. So he says here, one of the first acts of the U.S. Congress following the ratification of the Constitution was the enactment of this nation's first naturalization and immigration law in 1790. This is big. I need you all to think about this when the next election comes up and they tell you that you should be pro-immigration no matter what. This law declared America to be a white nation and set a zero quota on Black immigrants except as slaves. So they said no Black people can come into the country unless you are a slave. A quota of approximately zero remained in effect until 1965, when it was increased to its current level of 0.5%. Throughout most of the nation's history, peoples of African descent have been nearly shut out of the immigration and refugee programs of the United States. That's why they'll put $1 billion aside for Ukrainian importation, but they would not put a nickel aside if Ukrainians were Black. If they were Black Ukrainians, they would not be coming into the United States. Biden would not be putting money behind it. Biden would not be supporting any of that if they were coming from a Black nation. So this is a pattern. This is a history that has existed in America for a very long time. So he said Blacks have competed in this nation's majority wins population game almost exclusively from birth rates rather than immigration. So they can import white people into the country, and you have to reproduce Black people. If it doesn't get reproduced inside the United States, then it's not gonna matter. You're not gonna be able to compete numerically, right? So let's keep going. Let's see here. Though they can never win as a national majority, they also have never won as a local majority. The Black civil rights movement's quest for integration ensured that Blacks would always be a minority population in white schools, businesses, jobs, communities, or entertainment centers. So what Dr. Anderson's doing is he's questioning the movement of integration. We've talked about this before, how integration wasn't everything you thought it was going to be. Integration, in the view of many people, was something that was extremely harmful to the Black community. It was extremely bad in terms of what it did and did not do for you. And also remember, when you talk about immigration, not integration, immigration, most of the immigration policies that are being promoted to you by your favorite politicians are working directly against your power, period. Let's keep going. The census is conducted every decade and establishes the official population count of the country. Efforts to create a multicultural category in the 2000 census will most likely dilute and in reality distort downward the number of Blacks in America. So remember, he wrote this back in the 90s, so that's why he's referring to the year 2000 as the future. Dilution of population numbers assures that blacks will lose status as the numerical majority minority. Government efforts to change racial definitions will retain the white population majority as a monopoly and inflate the numbers of Hispanics in the population. So Dr. Anderson was predicting 30 years ago that the numbers of Hispanics in America was going to grow, 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 and you were going to remain flat and lose your power. Now, give me a yes or no if you think that that prediction has come to light, has actually occurred, has come to pass. Has it come to pass? Do we have a far larger Hispanic population than we had 30 years ago? Yes, exactly what Dr. Anderson said. This is what he's saying in the 1990s. And now here we are 30 years later, and you've seen it happen. Now your vote means almost nothing. It doesn't, I mean, you're almost kind of being diluted out of existence, period. So unity on some level with at least people that you can work with is extremely important. Coalition building is very important. I was talking to my daughter today, who's 11, and we were talking about about these wars that happened in Greece. I think they were called what's it called, the Polynesian War, or maybe I don't remember. I don't remember what they're called. So don't get me out here sounding stupid. But she said that the Spartans fought with the people from Athens, right? So the Athenians and the Spartans were going to war, and I said, but wait a minute, weren't the Athenians and the Spartans, weren't they both from Greece? Why were the people in Athens fighting against the people in Sparta? Aren't they supposed to be on the same side? And she said, yeah, but they were fighting over who would have the most power. Basically, the white version of fighting over who was going to be the HNIC. That's it. Except they have the HGIC, head Greek in charge, right? So the Spartans, and don't again, I'm gonna keep researching this, but this was an important conversation. We had this conversation an hour ago, and so she told me that the Spartans and who were the ultimate warriors fought against the Athenians, and I think the Athenians lost. I think Athens lost. And I said, that's not good that you're fighting with people who are supposed to be on your same side. And she said, yeah. She said that, I said, you know what that's called, right? She said, what? I said, it's called divide. And she said, divide and conquer. I said, yeah. I said, so, and she said, yeah, well, she said, yeah, that is what happened. Because while the Spartans and the Athenians were fighting each other in Greece, the Macedonians were accumulating power so they could go kick everybody's ass. Right, so the Macedonians said, while they're over there fighting, while they're over engaged in niggatry, that's the term I created to describe ridiculous, irrational, sick, triggered behavior. So they're engaging in this negatorious behavior and destroying each other. We're going to build up our power base and go take everything from everybody, right? So ultimately, when you are trained, and this was a conversation, this led to a conversation I had with my daughter. Everything has a lesson. So I said, so what are you learning here? And she said, well, I'm learning that divide and conquer is bad. I said, yeah. I said, this is what they've done to black people for 400 years. They have had light skin against dark skin, old against young, male against female, and you're fighting each other harder than you fight against your oppressor. All the while, your oppressor's sitting back like the Macedonians, accumulating power, and they come and they just conquer everybody. So I told her, I said, form your coalitions and stick to them. Loyalty is extremely important as a key to survival. Pick your people. I'm not saying pick every black person out here. Some black people don't like you very much. That's okay, right? But I talk to you guys. I say, okay, we're B1. We're intelligent black people. We want to build for the future. We're defining ourselves. This is who we are. This is our coalition. And I guarantee you this, you'll rarely see me. In fact, you haven't seen me. I have been attacked. I'll tell you, even, when you do the social media stuff, people got stuff to say or whatever. I have been relentlessly verbally attacked by other B1 oriented people. And if you'll notice, my response is pretty consistent. You know what the response is? Silence. I say nothing. I don't respond at all. Because I told y'all in 2017, I said, I'm not going to be out here fighting with black people when I'm constantly being under siege by the rest of the world. I'm not doing that with you. I'm not participating in any of that. Might avoid you, but I'm not going to fight with you. Right? So ultimately, when you're talking about this divide and conquer, this is something that's been going on in America for a very long time. This is a standard part of the toolkit for white supremacy. This is what they did with colonialism. I told her about the Hutus and the Tutsis, right? And I said, yeah, in Rwanda, I said, you know that millions of black people were slaughtering each other because some Europeans came over and said, the light-skinned people are better than the dark-skinned people. So next thing you know, we're fighting and killing each other, and they're controlling everything. So find your coalition. Starts with your family. Starts with your family. Your family protects you. So I told my daughter, I said, your sister, you ride with your sister no matter what. You ride with the family no matter what, because that's your coalition. That's what protects you, right? So start there and then form a broader coalition. Or if your relatives are no good or you can't work with them, then find some other relatives, right? When you come to the convention, pick your family members at the convention. Get you some play cousins, right? But pick your coalition, because that is how you survive. That is how you succeed. That's how you win. That's why they created laws. When I read to you guys 85 laws that they created specifically to control Black people, you'll notice one of the themes of the laws was that they did everything they could to make sure Black people did not stick together. Let's keep going. In his book, Uprooting Racism, Paul Kivel says, whiteness is a many-faceted phenomenon, slowly and constantly shifting its emphasis, all the time maintaining a racial hierarchy and protecting the power that accrues to white people. Although there are no natural or essential qualities or characteristics of whiteness or of white people, it is not an easy fiction to let go of. By constantly enlarging the ethnic boundaries of whiteness, all Europeans, Middle Easterners, Hispanics, and soon Asians, whites separate people who are entitled to privileges and wealth from people who are exploited and violated. In a group-based society, constant efforts to enlarge the majority white population ensure that a shared racial population monopoly will continue to exist far into the future. The 2000 census form offers Blacks 54 subcategories to opt out of their race and further atomize their population numbers. Wow. That's interesting. The census will not dilute whiteness. On the contrary, it further expands the definition of whiteness. Let's look at how, so you got multicultural, right? And then you got white, right? You got white people, and then you got all of the different multicultural variations, like the whole like Baskin Robbins 32 flavors going on here. All right, so let's look at how a shared white monopoly impacts Black America's life chances. Whites are a planned majority. Blacks, on the other hand, are a planned permanent minority. Limited by immigration policies, Blacks are only 12.4% of the general population. They are outnumbered 7-1 by a shared white majority that is 87% of the population. This means that whites can override Blacks at least 7 times, making it impossible for Blacks to, quote unquote, take over anything. Moreover, with the exception of entertainment, Blacks do not exceed 1% of ownership, control, or representation of anything positive in American society. Only thing you control is a little bit of gangster rap. And ain't nothing positive about some of that crap that's coming out of some of these artists' mouths. Seriously. I'm not talking about all of it, but my Lord Jesus, if you want to really ruin your life or choose a terrible baby daddy, then go study the lifestyles being promoted by mumble rappers. It's crazy. I talked to my cousin today, and we were joking. I said, I don't know why. I don't where. I was talking about a particular person, and I said, I don't know where she picked her baby daddy from. This baby daddy is like from the depths of hell. I've never seen a person work so hard to do the exact opposite of what a good man would do, and I don't understand what's attractive about it. And she said, yeah, I told one of my cousins, why do you go to the waste management facility to pick out your children's fathers? Like, why would you do that? Why would you go pick out your kids' daddies at the waste management company? And that's what it is. I mean, seriously, did anybody go through that? Does anybody like seriously, like, I said, my theory, honestly, I'm just keeping it 100 here. Maybe I sound like a crazy old man right now, but I think that this lack of manhood that exists in some corners and some pockets of the community, not in all, but some pockets, is driven by what's being promoted. It's driven by what's being glorified. A lot of men look up to men who are not actually men at all, right? So you think you're being more of a man by behaving a man who really ain't a man. He's really transgender or something. I don't know what he is, but he ain't no man because you telling me, wait, this is a man you look up to, and he got 7 kids with 7 babies mamas. He sits around and gets high and drunk all day. He don't take care of his financial responsibilities. He's ignorant as all get out. And he does everything a human being can do to possibly get locked up or killed. And you want that as the father of your child because you're attracted to men just because they were on TV? What in the hell is going on with you? And how badly do you have to hate your unborn children to give them a father like that? Seriously. I'm not blaming you, but my Lord Jesus, like, that's what they've done to us. Your brains just flipped on backwards, head screwed on in the other direction. So I'm sitting there just kind of reading this, and I'm just thinking about all this in terms of just what's kind of happened with some parts of our community. So in so many ways, we're just some of this stuff don't make no sense to me. You can't win like that. When Dr. Anderson talks about inappropriate behavior, all you gotta do is look all throughout um, what's promoted on media, and you'll find it everywhere. You'll find it absolutely everywhere. And then you wonder, and then it makes sense. It makes sense that most of our kids ain't got no daddy. It makes sense that a lot of these kids don't even have a dad that's contributing to the household, or crazy things that happen in people's households because nobody ever taught them a model of manhood. All right, so let me keep going. Sorry, I get carried away. Y'all know how I am. So let's keep going. So he says that let me jump in here. All right. So blacks do not exceed 1% of ownership, control, or representation of anything positive in American society. In critical skill professions such as doctors, lawyers, architects, engineers, scientists, judges, physicists, and business owners or wealth holders or elected officials, blacks never exceed 0.5%. If every black professional was hired in public sector or private sector jobs, whites would still hold approximately 99.5% of the professional positions. If all of the 36 million black people in the entire country were employed, the educated, the uneducated, senior citizens, those in prison, children, infants, teenagers, their total numbers would never exceed 12% of the workforce. When blacks try to even marginally increase their percentage in the workforce, whites are threatened and initiate a backlash. So some of this backward behavior is on us, but some of it is also on other people too, right? A lot of it is driven by our reaction to what other people are doing to us. So it's not as if we're completely to blame for this, but we are completely responsible for identifying the problem and fixing it. So let me keep going. All right. So he talks about wealth monopolies. We're at the bottom of page 17 in the book Powernomics. You can get a copy at powernomics.com. He says slavery and Jim Crow semi-slavery did not just make whites a little bit richer than blacks. Whites are vastly richer. They have deprived black people of nearly the whole economic pie. It is the proportion of the pie that a group owns that determines its access to functional schools, competitive businesses, equal justice, essential health care, personal comfort, and the length and quality of their lives. The nature of white wealth has cut blacks off from nearly all of these fundamentals of life. White society not only owns or controls most of the nation's wealth and power resources, but most of it is passed on from one generation of whites to the next. This is one reason why there is a lower proportion of whites who are poor compared to the number of poor blacks, and why the children of affluent white parents are less likely than blacks to ever be poor. Wealth is frozen and stored inside the white race, in its families, culture, businesses, churches, communities, education systems, and organizations in the form of stocks, bonds, land, insurance policies, trust accounts, and foundations. It is inconceivable that blacks could cross racial boundaries and successfully displace these frozen forms of wealth. As indicated in Table 1 is at the bottom of page 18. He points out a couple of interesting things. He says whites own nearly 100% of all corporate bonds and stocks, which amounts to approximately $13 trillion. Now, mind you, this was 30 years ago. So that 13 trillion has grown to 21 trillion, by the way. In 1986, the 256th largest company in the Fortune 500, a white corporation, had sales equal to the 16 billion total combined sales of the nation's 100 largest black-owned businesses as listed in the August 2000 edition of Black Enterprise magazine. So their 256th company had sales greater than all the top 100 businesses in America that were owned by black people combined. And this is not just true for corporations. It's also true if you look at universities. You can find a university, some raggedy, mediocre school that's like the University of Iowa, that has a bigger endowment than all the HBCUs combined, right? So anyway, it says during the 1980s, for example, The number of millionaires and billionaires also increased by 300 and 500 respectively, or sorry, 300 and 500% respectively. Although a handful of black entertainers and sports figures are included in the millionaire category, their standing is most often a result of increased income, which is not the same as increased wealth. Moreover, none of the wealthiest black entertainers and athletes appear on the Forbes list of the wealthiest 500. So even your richest black people in America can't compete with Bill Gates. Elon Musk pisses out 10 times more wealth than Oprah Winfrey will ever generate. He does that every morning. Robert Smith, he does okay, but he can't, Bezos and Musk and Gates and Buffett, they could buy Robert Smith 50 times, 100 times over if they wanted to. So ultimately, and Robert Smith is the extreme. I mean, he's really, really an outlier, right? So ultimately, a lot of the people that you look at as extremely wealthy, your Diddy's and your Kanye's and all that, first of all, most of them all get wealth from the same mechanisms. Black people tend to build a lot of that wealth from sports and entertainment. Those are two areas you're allowed to excel in because that's the space you're allowed to walk in. But then also, when you're really, the Forbes list to me, or the shiny Negroes they put on TV or on the covers of magazines, are a distraction from what is happening in the black community. Many black businesses can't even get basic bank loans from big corporations that should be willing to loan money to black-owned businesses that are doing a good job. So ultimately, when you're thinking about what's happening with black wealth, the trajectory of black wealth, I encourage you to stop paying attention to the shiny Negroes on the covers of magazines. I don't care how many albums you sold. I don't care. Everybody can't be a rapper or an NBA star. I really want you to focus on what's happening with black-owned businesses and whether black-owned businesses are getting access to the capital that they need, because studies show that black-owned businesses, those mom and pop shops that some of y'all are running, you're the ones who are most likely to actually employ black people. I know a lot of these rappers. I know a lot of these entertainers. Many of them ain't employing nobody. They don't even know how to run a business. They wouldn't even know how to create 500 jobs in the black community. But many of y'all have the credentials. Many of you have the MBAs and the master's degrees and the vast business experience and the technical skills, and you're trained in trucking and carpentry and everything else. You are the backbone of the community, not these people they put on TV. They're powder puffs in my view. None of them could really do what you guys do. So that's where you're going to see the movement in the community, is when they start allocating more capital to that group that I just talked about. All right. So by the way, just a quick reminder. Also, don't forget that if you guys came to the event we did yesterday, the event was how to build wealth in financial security without doing it by yourself. We talked about some of the memberships that we have in the Black Business School. If you still want to take a look at that presentation, we left it up for another day. You can actually go to boycewatkins.com. And at the very top, there's a link where you can actually take a look to decide if you want to be a member or join one of the level up programs we have in the Black Business School. We're kind of changing the structure a little bit, so feel free to take a look. The open enrollment period ends tomorrow night, though. After that, we're going to sit back and operate and look at the data, and then we're going to decide if we want to add more students or not. So if you would like to join, feel free to go take a look at that. All right, so let me keep going here. Let me keep reading. We're on page 18. The book is Powernomics. You can get a copy at powernomics.com. He says, also, obtaining wealth equality in America is a rigged game. There is no equal opportunity to gain wealth. Such opportunities typically depend on four factors. One, inborn capacity. I guess that's what you're born with, right? What you're born with in terms of, he says capacity. So I'm wondering if he's talking about intellect or if he's talking about resources you have. Cultural and educational opportunities. 3, ownership and control of resources. 4, the power of racism. He says, so in summary, this means a white person of normal talents who lives in an enriched culture with parents who can afford the best has an excellent chance to become rich and live well. Economic Darwinism tracks both parental and racial bloodlines. Structural racism enables whites to acquire wealth, while capital gains and inheritance laws ensure they will keep and control wealth. Steve Brower stated in his book, Sharing the Pie, that in 1996, Charles Darwin's of the Campbell Soup family inherited a great deal of wealth. He traded in 9 million shares of company stock and earned $740 million. Warren Buffett, a Wall Street investor, profited 10.6 billion over a period of 24 months for a total fortune of 21 billion, which by the way has grown to over 100 billion if I'm not mistaken. In comparison, nearly 50% of Black America has a net worth approaching zero because its debts negate any property or assets they can pass on to their offspring. The white economic stronghold on essential empowerment of resources is also reflected in business ownership and management, which is nearly 100% white and mostly male. So let's talk about this again. The four factors Dr. Ennis is talking about in terms of wealth. And I want us to brainstorm on how we can make sure that our children have those four things. One, inborn capacity. So I'm thinking inborn capacity at the very least means inheritance. You're going to give them an inheritance because you're going to do things like the $5 a day plan with your kids to make sure that by the time your child's 25 years old, they got at least 100 grand in liquid wealth. If you do $5 a day, you do it for 25 years, you're going to have well over $100,000 based on the history of the market. Just put the money into an S&P 500 index fund, leave it, set it, forget it, don't think about it, don't touch it, and invest as much. Try to invest at least half as much in your child as you put into your car note, right? Put at least half as much into the future of your children as you put into making some white man rich who sold you that car, right? If you do that for me, then I guarantee your kids are going to have that inborn capacity, at least in terms of inheritance, and also that second piece, cultural and educational opportunities. Wealth and culture are deeply linked. Wealth and culture are deeply linked. The reason I talk about culture a lot, the reason I talk about events happening in the Black community a lot that seem to go outside of wealth is because I'm talking about culture. Culture and wealth are deeply linked. The Jewish community has a great wealth building culture. That's why they become rich. So you ultimately, when you talk about forming the culture of your family, culture matters more than education. Culture matters more than opportunity. Culture matters more than damn near anything. And the reason is because culture defines your value system. It tells you what's important, right? So if my culture tells me not to eat pork, you could offer me 50 ham sandwiches, but I'm not going to pick a ham sandwich. I'm going to pick a salad because my culture says that eating pork is bad and eating eating green vegetables is good, right? So culture is far more important than education because culture also helps you determine what kind of education you want and what you do with the education you get. So we have a lot of Black people with a lot of education who have no culture. They have no culture. The only culture they know how to grab onto is either white culture that was fed to them in school or Black culture that they see on TV. So the first step is assimilation, where you start acting like a white boy, and then you find that doesn't work, and you start getting frustrated because they remind you every day that you're Black, and then you say, I want to be Black, I want to be blickety Black. Well, what does it mean to be Black? Well, I'm going to watch shows like Blackish, and that's going to tell me what it means to be Black. Since when does the ABC network or Netflix get to determine what Blackness is supposed to look like, or hip hop music? People say we're going to do it for the culture, do it for the culture. What culture are you talking about? Whose culture? Are you talking about rappers like Future with 10,000 babies mamas and diseases and alcoholism and promoting drug abuse? Is that the culture you're referring to? Well, guess what? That's not a wealth building culture. That is an anti-wealth culture. That is a pro-death culture. That is a slave culture. That is an ignorant culture. That is a harmful culture. That is an abusive culture to children. So when you say do it for the culture, I need you to be very specific about what your culture you're referring to. So I encourage you as parents who know better. You're smart. You know better because you're here. All of you that are listening right now you're here because you're different. You're more insightful. You're not like everybody else. I understand that. So because you know better, I need you to be intentional about asking yourself, what culture do we have in this house? I tell my kids all the time, my daughter didn't do her homework. I said, well, no, we don't do that in this house. In this house, our culture is excellence. In this house, no. When we went to her sister's track meet yesterday, poor little girl was jumping the hurdles and she fell down and she cried. She scraped her elbow and poor little girl was crying. So I turned to her little sister and I said, when we fall down, what do we do? She said, we get back up. I said, yeah, exactly. That's what we do. That's our culture. That's who we are. You understand? So the question is, who the hell are you? Who are you? Figure that out. Be very clear and intentional about that, and make sure that you pass that to your children. The same way we have tremendous capacity to pass generational curses to our children, you also have tremendous capacity to pass generational blessings to your children. So I need you to stop passing down generational curses, and I need you to start passing down generational blessings. I need you to zap out the curses and replace them with blessings and give your children the superpowers that come with shaping a household culture that is built on life, that is built on power, that is built on success, that is built on education, that is built on high achievement, that's built on all the things necessary to be strong in this world. Another part of our culture, little hint, I think I've told you guys this, I'm gonna say it again. I ask my daughter all the time, I drill her 3 times a week. I say, what are the 3 P's of success? She says, practice, preparation, and perseverance. I say, exactly. Then we dig in to what that culture means. What does it mean to practice? It means that if you want to get better, you practice, you work on it, you keep going, you keep working. She's a dancer. So we talk about that. If you're not there yet, you just keep practicing, right? So what was preparation? What's the culture of preparation? That means that if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready. If it's coming up, if the battle's coming, you win the battle before the war begins. You prepare, you plan. The one who makes the plan is the one who's going to win. The one who has no plan has already made a plan, and their plan is to get their ass kicked. If you don't have a plan, then your plan is to lose. Ladies, don't marry a man who doesn't have a plan, because that means he's planning on being a loser. 3rd piece, persistence. Persistence is when you get in the fire. Success ain't never easy. I could be defined as a successful person, whatever, right? Maybe money and whatever it is, right? I'm not even gonna get into that. But I can tell you that it's very uncomfortable. It's very tough sometimes. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of challenges, a lot of doubt, a ton of setbacks. And it is that persistence that allows you to stick to the original vision of who you know that you're supposed to be at the end of the day. Right? You shoot for the target, you miss, you recalibrate, you shoot again and again and again and again and again. And you keep saying, I'm going to keep going until I become the person that I know I'm meant to be. So understand that you're going to go through a lot of your life where you're going to feel like you have a size 10 foot and you're trying to fit a size 13 shoe. If you're a parent like me, you know that you don't know all the rules. You don't know the right way to do everything. None of us do. We're always kind of guessing. But if you're going to guess, then do your research as you make your guess, make it an educated guess, and then go hard at what you believe instinctually is the thing that's going to make your children successful. Right? Be clear and intentional about who the hell you are. Shape that culture. You are the gods and the leaders of that household. Do that. Lead. You're the black leaders in this country. You ain't got no leaders in DC. You ain't got no leaders in the NAACP. You ain't got no leaders on TV. You are the black leader. Let me keep going. So he talks about, so 4, inborn capacity, cultural and educational opportunities. Again, culture is something you shape on your own. Education is something anybody can obtain. We got the whole internet. I'm a college, my PhD is just as good as any white man that you're going to see out here, and probably better, actually. And so education is available to everybody. So educational opportunity, it's changed. There's no need to go $100,000 in debt to get an education anymore. Education's kind of everywhere. You got a whole university on your iPhone. Again, if you have the culture that tells you to use your iPhone for education, but if you have another culture that teaches you how to use your iPhone to learn how to twerk better, then guess what? You're going to spend your time learning how to twerk so you can get likes on your TikTok video. Next, ownership and control of resources. The number one resource we control as black people is black people. That's it. That's the first step. That's the first step of the revolution. Take back the multi-trillion-dollar resource that is you. Take back the multi-trillion-dollar resource that is your community. Take that back. You're taking that back. Remember, pay attention now. Think about this, right? A free black man or a free black woman is a wealthy black man. That is a wealthy black woman. A free black man is a wealthy black man. And let me explain why. White people got rich from what? Slavery. They got rich from controlling the very thing you have control of now. Now, if you're a slave, then no, you're not going to get rich from it. Somebody else is going to get rich from it. But if you are free, then you are wealthy because I can easily directly say that you are wealthy by controlling your human capital. I can say you're wealthy because somebody else gets wealthy off of you. So how can you make somebody else wealthy if you can't make yourself wealthy? All you got to do is control the resource. So the number one resource you have is yourself and your human capital. And then you have your family. That is another resource. So ultimately, ownership and control of resources starts with taking control of all of the assets and all the value that can be extracted from the entity that is you. That is you and your family. I'm sitting there with my cousins. We're coming up with business ideas. We're figuring out how to go make money. We're figuring out how to succeed. We're working for each other. We're working hard. We're getting things done, right? That's a valuable asset. So even if you don't own land or don't own stocks or don't own real estate, you can still start off by just simply owning black people. Hey, owning black people has been the easiest way on earth to make money since slavery. So start by owning black people. Own yourself. Don't you ain't gotta own nobody else, but own yourself, own your family, own your community. And then he says number 4 is the power of racism. Well, white people ain't gonna stop being white. That's and really racism. Racism is, as Dr. Anderson defines it, it is a system that sets up a structure in which white people are elevated over black people. People of one race are given preferential treatment to another. So let's think about that for a minute. The interesting thing about racism is it's never going to go away. It's never going to go away. I don't believe that a white man ever will, or nor should he ever put black people on the same level as he puts himself. I don't think it's even human nature for a man to put some other group of people ahead of his own people. I just don't believe that. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to put white, Asian, whatever, equal to me and my children and my people. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. Right? So racism isn't going to go away, but racism is like the weather. When you talk about the weather is not the same in every part of the country. The weather is not the same everywhere. It could be raining in Florida. It could be sunny in California. It could be snowing in Montana and sunny in Texas. And so if you don't like the weather where you live, one solution is to go somewhere else. So I'm in Montana. I'm freezing. Well, I say, you know what? I'm going to pack up and I'm going to move down to Texas because the weather's nicer in Texas. So a lot of times with racism, my point here is this. You don't have to always be where you are, right? If you're in a space where racism is stifling you and keeping you from getting opportunities and getting jobs and things like that, who says you have to be at that job? Who says you have to even have a job working for anybody? Who says you even have to be around people who don't like you? How about you go find a way to get around people who do like you? Why do you pay attention now? Look, let me ask y'all a question. I'm going to ask y'all a question that's going to be a little self-serving for a minute. Do you guys like me? Are we cool? Are we friends? Like if I see you, will you give me a hug? Like will you shake my hand? Are we're like family. We're cool, right? We like each other, right? Do we? Okay. All right. So okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Crystal and Karen. I need that. I need that little self-esteem boost. I feel loved, and I love you too, Angela. I love you too, LaShonda. Okay. So let me ask you this question. Do you think that I'm equally loved everywhere I go? Like, do you think that I'm loved everywhere in the same way that I'm loved it right here in this space? Do you think that if I go, on Fox News, you think they're going to love me as much as they love me here? Or y'all love me? Right? If I go to CNN, you think they're going to really, what do you think? Right. No, of course not. Of course not. So you know what I do? I stay on my side of the fence. I stay where I belong. I know the spaces where I have power, and I know the spaces where I do not. I know the spaces where I am protected. I know the spaces where I'm vulnerable. I know the spaces where I'm connected, and I know the spaces where I am disconnected. I don't go chasing spaces where they're not like me. So you'll never hear about me getting banned from the Oscars because I'll never be at the Oscars anyway. So ultimately, it's very important to understand and be very conscious and intentional about the space within which you operate, spaces where you live, spaces where you work, spaces where you socialize. Find your space, and then you find your power. Superman doesn't go hang out in the neighborhoods that have the most kryptonite. He's not going to go and find out where the kryptonite's at and say, where can I be? I want to be where the kryptonite is so I can feel weak and powerless. No, he stays away from the kryptonite so he can leap tall buildings in a single bound, right? And he can find his superpower. A lot of you lose your superpower because you're hanging out around the kryptonite. You're going into spaces where people don't understand you. I get it. I did when I was at Syracuse University. They didn't understand me. I come in with brilliant ideas and say, hey, why don't we do this? Can I do this research project? And they'd be like, why would we do that? That's black people. We don't care about black people, right? So I was basically Superman in a space where I was surrounded by kryptonite. So be thoughtful about where the kryptonite is and where your superpower lives. Go find your superpower. Everybody has one. You just got to know how to look for it. Right? So we can talk more about that later. We'll talk more about that in a future date. So I'm gonna actually stop here. I'm gonna stop here. We have consumed a lot of thought-provoking information. We're on page 19. The book is Powernomics. You can get a copy at powernomics.com. Quick reminders. Don't forget the All Black National Convention is at the end of October, October 28th through the 30th. You'll hear from me more and more about the convention because I want your input in terms of how we can have a great convention. I hope that you will bring family members and friends. I guarantee they're going to love it. It's going to be great. And we will sell out, actually. We actually have sold hundreds of tickets already. So we can only hold 1,000 people. But I think we're up to maybe 600 or something. So you may want to get your tickets sooner rather than later. I don't think there'll be tickets at the door. But if you're interested in coming, you can go to boycewatkins.com. That's where the tickets to the convention are. Also, some of you had asked about my book. So here, in case you want to know, here's my book. It's called Black American Money 3, and it's part of the Black American Money series. So if you are interested in taking a look, feel free to go to drboycebooks.com. That's drboycebooks.com. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much. It was real. Love you very much. And I will see you next week at the book club. So I will be back here next Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, and we will continue to read Powernomics until we are done. So God bless you guys. I love you. I'll see you later. Take care now. Bye-bye.